سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد, to begin with this session, let me first go very briefly to the first to the seventh ayat, because the connection between the various sections are very important. By talking to some of the brothers last week, I realized that there are certain issues which need to be made very clear. So let us go through the 1 to 7 ayat first. You have the Qur'an with you, and if you look at it, we divided it into 3 sections. First, we have the first to the third ayat, which is about the Prophet himself only. Keep this in mind. When Allah talks about this concept, إِنَّا فَتَحْنَا لَكَ فَتْحًا مُبِينًا, He is addressing the Prophet individually, singularly. He's not talking to the Muslims. And so when He talks about giving a clear victory, He's talking about what He has given to the Prophet, 4 things, so that God may forgive you the past and the future sins. Remember, the meaning of sins here is not in the literal sense, attributed to you by the Meccans. Number 2, so that He may complete His blessings upon you. Number 3, guide you to the right path. Number 4, so that Allah may help you a mighty help. These 4 things are the blessings of God in the connection of Fath Mubin to the Prophet personally. Then we go to the second 2 ayats, 4 and 5. This is where Allah is talking about the sakina, the tranquility that He granted to the believers. And here He talks about 3 blessings. Remember the numbers I told you last week, that when it comes to the Prophet, Allah mentioned 4 things. When it comes to the mu'mineen, He mentions only 3 things, because He wanted to maintain the difference in the status of Rasulullah as compared to the mu'mineen and mu'minat. And so He blessed 4 things to the Prophet, 3 things to the mu'mineen and mu'minat, by giving this tranquility so that they may increase their iman, number 1, and so that He may admit the believing men and women into gardens in the Jannat, and number 3, so that He may forgive them their sins. And then we go to ayat number 6 and 7. This is contrast of the second part, where Allah talked about mu'minin and mu'minat. Now He's talking about mushrikeen wal mushrikat and munafiqeen wal munafiqun wal munafiqat. And there also He talks about 3 things. Number 1, that their turn of fortunes will change, their situation would change. Number 2, God's anger and curse would be on them. And number 3, Allah has prepared for them the Jahannam as their evil abode. So keep this in mind, that until now what we have studied has to do with the blessings or opposite of it connected to Sulh Hudaybiyah. First about the Prophet, second about the mu'mineen, mu'minat, number 3 about mushrikeen wal mushrikat. Now we go on to now the second part. One of the brothers asked a question which was very relevant, that when Allah talked about tranquility and sakina that He sent in the hearts of the believing men and women, is it only for those people who were there in Hudaybiyah? Is this ayat in a way fixed historically for that time? The first part, where Allah talks to the Prophet, that is only tanzeel. It only applies to him and no one else till the day of Qiyamah. The second part, where He's talking about the mu'minin and mu'minat, this has tanzeel, where it applies primarily to the believers who were there at that time. And there is also ta'wil, in a sense, wherever they are believing men and women who have those qualities, Allah will send down His sakina and tranquility on their hearts. Now we go on to tonight's ayat number 8, 9, and 10. We'll be focusing more on ayat 8, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now is again going back to the Prophet of Islam and keeping in mind that in Hudaybiyah some people had some doubts about the Prophet's decision. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would like to reaffirm the status and importance of Rasulullah. And so this ayat comes in. Again, it's in the context of Sulh Hudaybiyah. إِنَّا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ شَاهِدًا وَمُبَشِّرًا وَنَظِيرًا. That verily we send you down as a shahid, as a witness, as a mubashiran. Mubashiran means somebody who gives good news, and nadhiran means somebody who gives a warning. Now, when we look at this, basically, the three things that Allah mentions. Number one, He is witness of the people on the day of Qiyamah. Means on the day of Qiyamah, Rasulullah will stand there and he will testify in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about the people, about their beliefs and about their actions. Number one, shahidan. Number two, he is bearer of good news. He brings basharat, mubashiran, for those who are believers, that when you believe and do good deeds, you have jannat. Opposite of that is nadhir. He is warning those who do not believe and do not do good. The Prophet says, I'm warning you that at the end you will have the fire of Jahannam. Now, out of all these three sifat and qualities of the Prophet that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions here, the most important one is the shahid. Shahid basically is from shahadat. And a shaheed also is used in the same meaning in Qur'an. Shuhada means witnesses. Unlike the way we use in Islamic literature, shaheed and shuhada applies to martyrs, because they are also, by their giving up their lives, they are actually testifying against the zalimeen of their own time. So even when we call a martyr a shaheed, this concept of testifying and being a witness is part of the meaning. And here Allah says that the Prophet is shahid. He gives shahadat. He gives testimony on the day of Qiyamah. Now, what does it mean? Basically, it means that on the day of Qiyamah, the Prophet of Islam will give a testimony regarding the people in general, about their beliefs and their deeds. Now, before I go back to this ayat, إِنَّا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ شَاهِدًا وَمُبَشِّرًا وَنَظِيرًا, this issue of shahadat, giving testimony, this is actually explained in Quran in different ayat. There is different categories of shuhada. Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there all the time. Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in shaheed. Allah is witness of everything. So Allah is the witness, number one, Himself. Number two, we have the angels, who are also witness of what we do. Inna alaykum lahafidhin kiraman katibin ya'lamuna ma taf'alun. That verily on you Allah has imposed guardians, kiraman katibin, noble writers, sitting here. And يَعْلَمُونَ مَا تَفْعَلُونَ. They know whatever you do. Another ayat from Surah Fath, ذَلِكَ يَوْمُ الْوَعِيدِ وَجَاءَتْ كُلُّ نَفْسٍ مَعَهَا سَائِقٌ وَشَهِيدٌ. On the day of Qiyamah, these angels will be with you, testifying for or against you. So that's second category of the shuhada. Number three, our own bodily limbs. And this is something we forget all the time. We use our hands to do something haram, not realizing this hand is going to testify against me. And this is where, if you look at the ayat of Quran, in Surah Nur, Allah says, يَوْمَ تَشْهَدُ عَلَيْكُمْ عَلَيْهِمْ أَلْسَنَتُهُمْ وَأَيْدِيهُمْ وَأَرْجُلُهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. On the day when their tongues and their hands and their feet will testify on what they had done. Another ayat from Surah number 41, Surah Fussilat, where Allah says, وَيَوْمَ يَحْشُرُ أَعْدَاءَ اللَّهِ إِلَى النَّارِ فَهُمْ يُوزَعُونَ. On the day of Qiyamah, when Allah will order the enemies of Allah to be sent to the Jahannam, when they come to the Jahannam, now they see this is the end, they will first argue with their own body. حَتَّى إِذَا مَا جَاءُوهَا. When they reach to the fire, شَهِدَ عَلَيْهِمْ سَمْعُهُمْ وَأَبْصَارُهُمْ وَجُلُودُهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. The bodily limbs will talk and say, see, you are doing these things. You did not even pay attention to me. You looked at other shahids around, or nobody is watching me. And Allah is, of course, off our radar at that time. But then the limbs will say, but I was there. You were using me, and you ignored me, and today I'm going to testify against you. And so the bodily limbs also become shaheed and shahid on the day of Qiyamah. Number 4, even the makan, the space. That's why you see the recommendation that try to change your place of namaz. You will see in many communities, when they will do wajib namaz one place, when they comes for nafila, they will move away and do the nafila somewhere other place. Why they do that? So that both places will testify on the day of Qiyamah that Allah, yes, He did His salat on me. So even this makan, this space where you are doing things, are going to testify for or against. And of course, even in Surah Zilzal, when the earth will start, in a way, talking, and human being will say, what's the problem with you? What is going on? يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا. When the earth will give its information, everything which is in there. And finally, one more in this category is not only makan, even zaman, even the time. Now, this is not based on a ayat, but there is a hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen where he says, مَا مِنْ يَوْمٍ يَمُرُّ عَلَى بَنِي آدَمٍ إِلَّا قَالَ لَهُ ذَلِكَ الْيَوْمِ. There is not a single day through which a person passes through it, but that day is addressing that person. It is saying, أَنَا يَوْمٌ جَدِيدٌ وَأَنَا عَلَيْكَ شَهِيدٌ. I am your new day for today. And I am witness on you what you are doing. فَافْعَلْ فِيَّ خَيْرًا وَعْمَلْ فِيَّ خَيْرًا. Therefore, do good in this day that you have. أَشْهَدُ لَكَ بِهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. I will testify on your good deeds on that day, on the day of Qiyamah. فَإِنَّكَ لَن تَرَانِي بَعْدْ هَذَا أَبَدًا. After this day is gone, it's gone. It's a new day coming tomorrow. So every zaman will basically also testify for or against us. So we have this concept of, shahada, of the amal, of the human beings on a general level. So you have Allah, malaika, the bodily limbs, the makan and zaman also. But let us now go back to this ayat, إِنَّا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ شَاهِدًا وَمُبَشِّرًا وَنَظِيرًا. The Prophet is being specially mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a witness of our beliefs and deeds. Now the reason this is done is just to emphasize the status of the Prophet. There are 3 different places in Qur'an where Allah has talked about it at 3 different levels. And this is very important to understand the status of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The first one is this very simple ayat. Ayat number 8 of Sura Fath. Inna arsalnaka shahidan. That we have sent you as a shahid, as a witness. This is very simple. Well, witness, he's going to testify on the day of Qiyamah, for or against us. But then we have another explanation about him. In Quran itself, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now presenting the Prophet as a shahid and a witness over the entire Muslim ummah from his day to the day of Qiyamah. And this becomes a little bit, it needs more understanding. It's not that easy. And the ayat for this is, there are two ayats in Quran. One is from Surah Baqarah, ayat number 143, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونُ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. If you look at the literal translation of this ayat, it says, thus we have made you, the ummah in general, a middle nation, that you may be witnesses, shuhada, plural, witnesses over the people, and that the messenger, the Rasul, may be the witness upon you. Our brothers, other Muslims, well, they say, see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, we, Muslim ummah, is witness over the world. And Rasulullah is going to be witness over the Muslim ummah. So you have the rest of the world, and you have the Muslim ummah in middle, and you have Rasul on the other side. This is how they explain it. But the problem is that who is referred to in this ayat? وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ, and we have made you, the shuhada. Does it apply to each and every member of the ummah? Because if you say collectively, you're talking about everyone. And this cannot really be true. I don't even know what is happening behind this wall. And no one in this hall knows what is going on behind this wall. Collectively, the ummah, wherever they are, they don't know what is happening on the other side. Whatever is ghaib is ghaib. They don't have the ability to know what's going on. They don't have the ability to know the true belief of individuals, whether there is iman in their heart or nifaq in their heart. We individually or collectively don't have the ability. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not talking about the Muslim ummah here. He is actually talking about a select group from the ummah, but then by extension he is using the general terms. Let me just explain this more. For example, in Quran you will see in many places Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressing Bani Israel, he says, وَفَضَّلْنَاكُمْ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ. We have preferred you, O Bani Israel, over all the people of the world. Now this fazilat that Allah has given to Bani Israel, does it apply to every individual of Bani Israel? Even somebody who was zalim, fajir, maybe he was sharibul khamr, he was zani, qatil, ghasib. No, it doesn't apply to everyone. It only applies to the chosen ones among Bani Israel. And because of them, Allah uses general terms. For example, you look at the situation, I'm sure some of you, if not all, have been interested in this World Cup, which took place last week. Now everybody is saying India is the world champion of cricket. Does it mean all billion-plus Indians are expert in cricket? Does that status of being world champion apply to every Indian? No. It was just a very small group who played in the name of the nation, and they became world champion. And because of their success, it is extended metaphorically to the whole nation. It doesn't mean everyone there is an expert or champion of that sport. Similarly, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Bani Israel, we have excelled you, it doesn't mean every individual Bani Israel. No, it refers to Anbiya and Mursaleen who were sent among them, or the awsiya of their Anbiya. And similarly here, it does not refer to everyone from the Ummah. Otherwise, you have Abu Sufyan in there, Muawiyah in there, Yazid in there, all these bad guys. And I don't think anybody can say that, all these people, qualify for this status of being shuhada ala nas. Maybe the nas are shaheed against them, not the other way around. So it doesn't apply to every one of the ummah. It only applies to a select group. And even the scope of their shahadat, their act of testifying. This is not a normal kind of shahadat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about when He talks about the Prophet and this group. He is talking about those who will testify on the day of Qiyamah that, oh Allah, this person was a mu'min, this was a munafiq. This issue of iman and nifaq are inner issues. Or this person was a good doer, or this person was an evil doer. Many of the deeds depend on the niyyat, that I and you cannot know that. We just look at the appearance of things. So we are not talking about normal shahadat here. We are talking about a special select group whom Allah has equipped with the ability of knowing the hearts and the minds of the people. Who have the ability to see what is going on behind this wall. And so on the day of Qiyamah, they will be able to testify for or against that. And this is something which is only exclusively a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those who are the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just to assure you, this is not an obscure, view. We are not talking about a ghulub here. Let me just read a passage from Allama Tabatabai, one of the prominent scholar of this century, and his Tafseer al-Mizan is very well acclaimed and respected. Where he talking about this, he says, obviously our normal senses, with all their powers, cannot perceive except the exterior forms of deeds and actions. And that also a thing which is present, which is within the reach. Only that we can know. They cannot, normal people cannot perceive a non-existing or non-present item. Means something is not present in our vicinity. And it is completely beyond their power to know, comprehend, or identify the realities of those actions and deeds, nor can they observe the immaterial ideas like iman and kufr, or success and failure. In short, no man can witness a thing which is hidden from the five senses, nor can he observe the esoteric ideas and characteristics that are locked into another person's heart. And then he goes on to say that actually, and then he says, in short, the witnessing mentioned in the verse under discussion does not mean this ummah follows a religion which combines physical perfection with spiritual sublimity. Certainly, this explanation has nothing to do with the meaning of witness. And then he goes on to say, let me give you this. Anyway, I'm not able to find the English translation. Let me just read the Arabic part of it, and then I'll just translate it directly. Basically, after talking about this issue, he says, فَهِيَ مِمَّا لَيْسَ فِي وُسْعِ الْإِنسَانِ إِحْصَاؤُهَا وَالْإِحَاطَ بِهَا وَتَشْخِيصُهَا مِنَ الْحَاضِرِينَ فَضْلًا عَنِ الْغَائِبِينَ إِلَّا رَجُلٌ يَتَوَلَّى اللَّهُ أَمْرُهُ وَيَكْشِفُ ذَلِكَ لَهُ بِيَدِهِ. He says this ability of being witness of that scope is not possible within the abilities of a normal human being, and he cannot even know about those who are present, let alone those who are absent from him, except رَجُلٌ يَتَوَلَّى اللَّهُ أَمْرُهُ, except a person who has the wilayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is under the guardianship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah basically gives him that ability to know things and be a witness on the day of Qiyamah. And so when we look at this issue, we realize that, this ayat is not referring to the ummah, it is actually referring to the a'imma. And there are some, narrations also which apply this ayat on the A'immah. There is no issue of the word being changed here. No, the word is there. But the application of the term Ummah is not to individuals, it is only to a select group in the Ummah. And those are the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you read this ayat in that way, what it means is that, and thus we have made you, or the A'immah, the middle nation, so that you may be witness over the people, or over the Ummah. So the Imam of each time will be a shaheed on the people of his own time, and then on the day of Qiyamah, the Rasul would be a witness on that Imam of the time. And so, you know, the Ummah on one side, Imam in the middle, and Rasul as a shahid on the Imam. Another ayat in the same context, which is even broader. Now, the previous ayat we only talked about our own Ummah. The A'immah being witness on the Ummah, and the Rasul being the witness on the A'immah. Now we go to a status where Rasulullah is actually the grand witness for all human beings, even for the nations and the Ummahs which came before Rasulullah. I know it's not easy to observe that, but be with me for a few minutes, we'll go through it. And this is the ayat. Two ayats from Qur'an. Ayat number 41 from Surah An-Nisa, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَيْفَ إِذَا جِئِنَا مِنْ كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ بِشَهِيدٍ وَجِئِنَا بِكَ عَلَى هَؤُلَاءِ شَهِيدًا. That how will it be when we shall bring, referring to the day of Qiyamah, when we shall bring from every nation a witness. Every Nabi will come to testify for or against his own people. And we bring you as a witness over the witnesses. So all the Mursaleen of the past will be there on the day of Qiyamah, and they will testify for or against their own ummah. And Rasulullah will come and he will say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I testify, for example, Isa ibn Maryam fulfilled his duty. And he was a shaheed on his own people. Another ayat, وَيَوْمَ نَبْعَثُ فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ شَهِيدًا عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ. And on the day we shall raise in every ummah a witness against them from themselves. وَجِئْنَا بِكَ شَهِيدًا عَلَى هَؤُلَاءِ. And we shall bring you, individually, talking to the Rasul, we shall bring you as a witness over them. And so every ummah, or even of the past, will come with their Rasul of the time or the Wasi of the time who will testify, and a Rasul will come and testify in the favor of that shaheed. These two ayats, when we look at it, it can only be acceptable and meaningful if we believe in this concept that the nur of Rasulullah, not the body, the nur of Rasulullah was the first creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this universe. There is a very famous hadith where the Prophet says, أَوَّلُ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ نُورِي. That the first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created was my nur. That nur of Muhammad has that potential and power that even though physically he came to this dunya 1400 years ago, and when we say he is the shahid for his own people, it's humanly understandable. But when you talk about him being the shahid of the people who will come after him, that is even more difficult. And even more difficult is when we say he's a shahid on the ummahs which came before him. Unless you believe in this concept that the nur of Muhammad was there as the first creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are many, many Sunnis who agree with this concept. Only those who deny that are the Wahhabis, the Salafi groups. But the majority believe in this concept and the hadith of the Prophet where he says, أَوَّلُ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ نُورِي, that the first thing that Allah created was my nur. So it is His nur which is the witness of everything which is happening. And on the day of Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make him as Sayyid al-Mursaleen, and the leader of the Anbiya to be there to testify on their behalf. Let me give you one more indication of this from ayat of Qur'an. You will say, well, you went back to hadith of Rasulullah. If you look at the status of Anbiya and Mursaleen, all Muslims agree that there were 124,000 prophets. Among them, the Mursaleen were more greater than others. Among the Mursaleen, the 5 were at the top, known as Ulul Azm. And among the top 5, we have the name of Nuh, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, and Muhammad, salawatullah alayhim ajma'een. Among them, of course, we believe our Prophet is the best of them. But among others, Nuh and Ibrahim and Musa and Isa, if you look at it, probably Ibrahim is the most elderly prophet, if I may use that term. You know, the most highly mentioned in Quran also. And it's very interesting that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Anbiya and Mursaleen, you know, He uses different terms about them, which are not same when He uses for us. If you remember, we talked about this concept of different darajat of Iman last week, that there is Iman, then Iman, and again Iman, then Amal Salih, another Amal Salih, there is one taqwa, another taqwa, and it just goes up and up and up. Similarly, when we talk about the concept of Salih, Amal Salihat, for example, means good deeds. Salihin are those who do good deeds, righteous people. Even the righteous people, there is levels of them. Even among Anbiya and Mursaleen, there is a level of those who are Salihin. For example, if you look at one ayat, Surah number 6, ayat 84, 85, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the names of the prophets. Let me just read this ayat. It's not the complete ayat in the screen. وَوَحَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ كُلًّا هَدَيْنَاهُ. Referring to Ibrahim, Allah says that we blessed him with Ishaq and Yaqub. كُلًّا هَدَيْنَاهُ. All of them, we guided them. وَنُوحًا هَدَيْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِ. And before Ibrahim, we had Nuh. وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِهِ. And from the descendants of Ibrahim is Dawood wa Sulaiman wa Ayyub wa Yusuf wa Musa wa Harun. These are the descendants of Ibrahim. وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. This is how we reward the good doers. And then Allah continues the list. وَزَكَرِيَّا وَيَحْيَا وَعِيسَى وَإِلْيَاسَ. And then at the end he says, كُلٌّ مِّنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. What do you have on the screen? Mentioning all these names of the famous prophets from Ibrahim and before him Nuh, and Musa is there, Isa is there. Allah says, كُلٌّ مِّنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. All of them are from the Salihin. They are Anbiya, of course they are from the Salihin. But then, later on, you will see Ibrahim alayhi salam. In the later part of his life, if you look at the du'as of Ibrahim in Quran, there are more than one. You will see one of the du'as he has when he is now very old. And there he prays to Allah and he says, Rabbi habli hukman wa lihiqni bis-salihin. Oh Allah, give me wisdom, or power, whatever way you want to translate hukman. Wa lihiqni bis-salihin. And join me among those who are salihin. There is a problem there. Allah already says that kullun min as-salihin. All of them are from the salihin. And now Ibrahim is old, and then he is saying, oh Allah, join me with the salihin. What is he talking about? He is actually already on the level of salihin, but when he looks up, he realizes there is a group even above me. I am on the level of salihin, but there is another level above me, and I have not yet reached there. His dua now is to be included among those. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala respond to his dua? And this is in 3 places in the Quran. Allah says, وَآتَيْنَاهُ أَجْرُهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا. two places. And in third place he says, وَلَقَدْ اسْتَفَيْنَاهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا. He says, as far as his dua is concerned, we have chosen him in this dunya, we have given him his reward in this dunya, but as far as his dua to be included among the salihin, he says, وَإِنَّهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ لَمِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. Ibrahim, we will not include you among the salihin, that group now. In the akhirah, we will place you with them. It means there is a group that even Ibrahim knows them, and he's looking at them, and he's praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ. Oh Allah, join me to that group of salihin who is even higher and above than me. And Allah says, I'll accept your dua, but not in this dunya, in the hereafter. And this is where we have to come to realize that there is a group, not one individual, there is a group. Whether in physical form or in the nur form, that Ibrahim knows them, and he realizes that they have been given higher level, and he is asking to be included among them. And if you look at this ayat, especially the timing of the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and the response of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will come to believe in this concept that there is a group of people who are at a higher level than even Prophet Ibrahim alayhi wa ala rasulina salawatullah alayhim. Salawat. I'll leave these numbers, inshallah, in the next handout will go out. The last previous three handouts will reach to you tomorrow, inshallah. It's already been sent to Brother Parvez this evening. So you look at those ayat and study, and then you will see what I'm trying to say, that even among the Mursaleen on the top levels, there is also, levels among them of the Salihin. Now we go to the next two ayats, ayat number 9 and 10. This is again continuing on the same theme, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would like to solidify the status of the Prophet. Especially keeping in mind that, some people had had entertained doubts about his wisdom and his decision, even question his integrity on that incident of Sulh Hudaybiyah. And so, furthermore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we have made him shahid and mubashir and nadhir. Why have we given him this status? لِتُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَتُعَزِّرُوهُ وَتُوَقِّرُوهُ وَتُصَبِّحُوهُ بُكْرَةً وَأَصِيلًا. There are 5 things here that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. Number 1, he says, لِتُؤْمِنُوا. I have given this status to the Prophet as a shahid, mubashir and nadhir for number 1, so that you may believe in Allah. Number 2, so that you may believe in His messenger. Number 3, so that you may support him. Number 4, وَتُوَقِّرُوهُ. Tawqir, even in Urdu and Farsi, we use in the meaning of respecting and honoring somebody. So showing reverence to the Prophet. And number 5, وَتُصَبِّحُوهُ بُكْرَةً وَأَصِيلًا. To glorify Allah in the mornings and the evenings. Now, if you see, I used glorify Him with the capital H, support Him and revere Him with small h. Those small h refer to the Prophet, the capital H refers to Rasulullah. Now, there are some who say, well, all these statements that you should support Him, revere Him, and glorify Him, all go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you, not that Allama Tabatabai rejects the status of the Prophet, but he also looks at this zama'ir, the pronouns, وَتُعَزِّرُوهُ وَتُوَقِّرُوهُ وَتُصَبِّحُوهُ, the who at the end, Him. He also believes that it goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there are others, including Ayatollah Nasir al-Makarim Shirazi says, no, tu'azziruhu, that you should support him, wa tuwaqqiruhu, that you should honor and respect him, refers to the Prophet and not to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We, on this issue, side with the opinion of Ayatollah Makarim here. And I'll tell you one reason for it. If you have the ayat in front of you, you will see, وَلِتُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. The names of only Allah and Rasul has come. The name of Allah is first, the name of Rasul is second. And then the three words are there. تُعَزِّرُوهُ وَتُوَقِّرُوهُ وَتُصَبِّحُوهُ. The question is, there's three who at the end of these words. Does it refer to Allah or to the Rasul? In the normal Arabic language, whenever you have a dhamir, a pronoun, it goes to the closest noun before it. And the closest here is Rasul, not Allah. And so when we look at tu'azziruhu, it means tu'azziru Rasul. Tuwaqqiruhu is referring to Rasul. But then in the third one, when it comes to tusabbihuhu, we don't have a choice but to refer it back to further back to Allah, because glorifying doesn't happen to the Prophet. We don't do the tasbih of the Prophet, we do the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. So we have a reason there in the third case to move it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in between tu'azziruhu wa tuwaqqiruhu, we would take it back to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You know, this is where we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really has gone out of his way to show the honor and the status of Rasul in his eyes. Unfortunately, many Muslims, you know, during our time don't believe in this. You know, there is also a group which believes that the Prophet was just a messenger in the English sense of the word. You know, when you get a parcel from, you know, what is it? Federal Express, for example. This fellow brings the parcel, gives it to you. He is Amin, but he doesn't know what is inside it. And they say, you know, Rasul brought the Qur'an from Allah to you. It's nothing to do with what is in it. It is for you, you read it, and you do your own understanding of it. And this is where we have to realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only in this, there are many, many ayat, many, many surahs where He actually, you know, greatly talks about this issue of وَتُوَقِّرُوهُ. You know, tawqir. You have to respect and honor the Prophet himself. And when you respect him, it is not only respecting him, you are actually respecting and honoring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is obvious from the following ayat, which is the last ayat for tonight. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُبَايِعُونَكَ إِنَّمَا يُبَايِعُونَ اللَّهَ يَدُ اللَّهِ فَوْقَ أَيْدِيهِمْ. Now, we will talk about this bay'ah, known as Bay'atul Rizwan, in ayat number 18, which will come in this surah. In the first night, we talked about the story of Sulh Hudaybiyah, and there we, if you remember, when the Prophet has sent Uthman bin Affan to Mecca and he was delayed in coming back, there was rumors circulating that he has been killed by the mushrikeen of Mecca, and so the Muslims became very agitated, and there was a lot of tension there. So Rasulullah, just to reaffirm, to test their loyalty to him, he asked them to do bay'at to him, to reaffirm their bay'at. Bay'at means pledge of allegiance. And the way it's done is that, you know, they will bring their hand and Rasul will put his hand over them. This is how the bay'at was done. And they will say, we basically pledge that we will be with you till the last moment of life. We will not betray you. This was known as Bay'atul Rizwan. Now, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will talk about it, Bay'atul Rizwan, later on in ayat number 18, the implication and what it means. But here Allah is just talking about the status of the Prophet. So He says, when these Muslims did bay'at to you, O Muhammad, tell them They were not just doing bay'at to you, إِنَّمَا يُبَايِعُونَ اللَّهِ. They were actually doing bay'at to me, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is where Allah says, يَدُ اللَّهِ فَوْقَ أَيْدِيهِمْ. It's not only Rasul's hand which is there, it's actually Allah's hand which is there. This is to emphasize the status of Rasulullah. فَمَنْ نَكَثَ فَإِنَّمَا يَنْكُسُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ. Whoever betrays this pledge, he is doing it at his own detriment. وَمَنْ أَوْفَى بِمَا عَاهَدَ عَلَيْهِ اللَّهِ. يَنْكُسُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ. نَكَسَ, to betray. Nakisin, when you study the life of Ali, the three groups who opposed him, one of them are known as Nakisin, those who betrayed the bay'at, referring to the people of Jamal. وَمَنْ أَوْفَى بِمَا عَاهَدَ عَلَيْهِ اللَّهِ فَيُؤْتِيهِ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. Whoever fulfills the covenant that he has made with Allah, Allah will give him a great reward. This is where we see that there was no ayat which came down asking Rasul to ask for the bay'at from Muslims. But in this ayat, Allah is saying that when Rasul asks you for bay'at, you are not doing bay'at of Rasul, you are doing bay'at of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is an example that even though an ayat doesn't come down, Jibreel didn't come down, Rasul said something, what he said and what he did was according to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you hear this ayat from Surah An-Najm, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. This is an example. No wahi had come down ordering the Prophet to ask for bay'at. He himself did it. But Allah says what he did was actually done according to my will. And this is example of, another ayat in Quran in Surah Anfal, where Allah says, referring to one of the jihads of the Prophet, وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. That when you throw, you shoot the arrow towards the enemy, Muhammad, it was not you who did it. It was Allah who was shooting the arrow. So the status of Rasulullah is basically being reaffirmed in this series of the ayat that we looked at tonight, ayat number 8 and 9 and 10. Inshallah, we'll continue the tafseer from the next section, inshallah, next week. Any question? It's already 9:30, but we'll use 5 minutes. Yes. The question is that even Salihin have different levels. Well, the issue of Salihin was not really connected to testifying. I was just using that as an example of, different levels, even Anbiya and Mursaleen among them. Ibrahim also is already among the Salihin, but there is another level of Salihin that he is wishing to be among them. That was the point as far as Salihin is concerned. But Shuhada in general, yes, there are different categories. Even a person who is influential in the community, he also, if he is a righteous person, he will stand up as a shaheed for his own community. And there will be somebody else about him. Where will we fit? We only pray that whoever testifies, over us, he is always, merciful towards us. That's all. I don't think we should be looking for more than that. Yes. Yes, it's basically the issue of prayers. No, this is a covenant, means bay'at of Rasul. This covenant here is referring to the bay'at that people had done in Surah Hudaybiyah. The Muslims had done bay'at to Rasulullah. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Whoever violates this bay'at, then this will go against him. And whoever fulfills this bay'at, then they will be given the reward. So it's nothing to do with the mushrikeen here. No. Let us conclude with a short dua. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.